golden nuggets, those game-changing insights on turning canine trauma into trust.
Yeah, and you've got a really interesting approach here called brain training for dogs. And it goes beyond just your basic commands and dives into how a dog's past can shape their present behavior.
Brain training. Okay, now you've got my attention. I mean, we all know that rescue dogs can come with baggage, right? But I'm curious to understand how this brain training can help them overcome those challenges.
Well, one of the things that struck me about the research you've got here is how much it emphasizes understanding the dog's history. It's not just about addressing the behavior you see, but thinking about what caused it.
So instead of just saying, my dog is afraid of loud noises, we're saying, okay, well, what happened in their past that might have created this fear?
Exactly. Like a dog that flinches when you raise your hand might not just be skittish. It could be they were mistreated and now associate that gesture with danger.
Right.
The material you've got here highlights some common challenges. Fear of specific objects or situations, difficulty bonding, resource guarding, anxiety in new environments, and reactivity to certain triggers.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to think about. But it makes sense. These behaviors aren't signs of a bad dog, are they? They're coping mechanisms.
And you hit the nail on the head. They are survival mechanisms, not personality flaws.
Right.
And that's a crucial starting point for rehab, viewing these behaviors through a lens of empathy and understanding.
Okay, so how do we start to undo that trauma and build trust? I'm guessing diving straight into obedience training isn't the best first step.
You're right. The research suggests that the first step isn't training, but creating a safe haven for your rescue dog.
Okay,
It's like building a foundation of security before you add the walls and the roof, right?
that makes sense. But what does creating a safe haven actually look like? These dogs have often been through so much upheaval and change. So how do we make them feel safe in a new environment?
It starts with simple things, like a quiet space they can call their own, a place to retreat and decompress without being disturbed.
Okay,
Sticking to consistent routines for feeding and walking, providing predictability and reducing anxiety.
got it.
This consistency, it's not just about making the dog feel safe, it actually has a neurological basis. Predictable routines reduce stress hormones and help the dog feel more in control.
Wow, I never really thought about it like that. That something as simple as a predictable schedule could actually impact a dog's brain chemistry.
Yeah.
But what about exploring their new home? I mean, do we encourage them to roam free right away, or is that too overwhelming?
It's about letting them explore at their own pace, no forcing interaction or pushing them into situations that might make them anxious.
Okay.
Think about it. If you were suddenly in a totally new environment, you'd want time to adjust, right? To figure things out on your own terms.
That's a great analogy. So we're laying the groundwork for trust before we even think about commands and tricks. So this is where the brain training comes in. But what sets this apart from traditional training methods? Is it just a fancy name for teaching tricks?
Not at all. Brain training really focuses on tapping into a dog's natural intelligence, their problem-solving abilities.
Okay.
So instead of relying just on commands and obedience, we're engaging their minds with puzzles and games and activities, that challenge them in a good way. The stuff you sent really highlighted how this kind of mental stimulation can help dogs overcome anxieties. It's like giving them an outlet for pent-up energy and stress.
So we're not just teaching them to sit and stay, we're giving them the tools to think for themselves and build confidence.
Right.
I like that. What kind of simple exercises can someone start with when introducing brain training?
Even something as basic as look at me training can be a powerful tool. It establishes a connection, helps you capture your dog's attention, and then you can move on to name recognition games, gentle touch, desensitization, so very slowly and gradually getting him used to being touched, and reward-based focus exercises.
Yeah, it's all about those foundational building blocks of communication and trust.
Right.
But we have to remember, these dogs often come with a history of trauma. So we're not rushing them through this process, are we?
You're absolutely right. Patience is key, but it's more than just waiting. It's about understanding that progress takes time and celebrating the tiny steps forward. One of the studies you sent actually tracked the progress of rescue dogs using brain training and showed significant improvements in their confidence and well-being over time.
So it's not a quick fix. It's a long-term investment in their well-being.
Exactly.
And speaking of patience, one of the things I found interesting was how the material emphasized that smaller, more frequent training sections are more effective than long, drawn-out ones.
Absolutely. And it's not just about time management. It's about respecting their capacity to learn, to process information. Think about it. You wouldn't expect a child to learn algebra in a single day.
Right.
You'd break it down into smaller, digestible chunks.
Right.
It's the same with brain training for dogs. Short sessions, focused, and always end on a positive note.
Okay, so short bursts of mental stimulation with lots of positive reinforcement. It's
Exactly.
about creating a positive learning experience for the dog, right? Something that they don't fear or dread.
Right.
And what about those interactive puzzle toys you mentioned? Do those play a role in brain training?
Oh, they're fantastic for mental enrichment. Not only do they keep the dog entertained, but they help them develop problem-solving skills and build confidence. It's like giving them a mental workout.
It's like a brain gym for
Oh,
dogs. I
yeah.
love that. So we've got those fundamental building blocks of communication and trust. We're incorporating short brain training sessions, and we're keeping their minds engaged with puzzle toys. What's next on this rehabilitation journey?
Well, now that we've established that foundation of trust, we can start carefully introducing them to new experiences, but in a controlled way.
Okay.
It's about building their confidence gradually, showing them that the world isn't such a scary place. But we'll dive deeper into that in part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm hooked. Welcome back to our deep dive into rescue dog rehabilitation. So we've talked about, understanding their past, creating a safe haven, starting with those brain training exercises. And now I'm kind of curious to dig into those specific challenges that rescue dogs, and let's be honest, a lot of dog owners often face.
Yeah, absolutely. Building on that foundation of trust that we've been talking about is crucial for tackling things like fear of handling, resource guarding, separation anxiety, all things that can be, a bit more intense for dogs with a history of trauma or instability.
Okay, let's start with that fear of handling. I've heard so many stories about rescue dogs who they shy away from being touched, or like they totally panic if they feel trapped. What's the first step in helping them overcome that?
Well, the key is remembering that their reactions are coming from a place of fear, not defiance.
Right.
So instead of forcing interaction, we're shifting the focus to gradual desensitization and building positive associations with touch.
Okay.
We can start with indirect interactions, like simply sitting near the dog without making direct eye contact, maybe tossing treats their way from a distance.
So we're kind of showing them that we respect their space and that being near us doesn't automatically mean they're going to be touched or handled.
Exactly. As the dog starts to relax and approach more willingly, we can gradually decrease that distance, maybe offer treats from our hand. If they're still hesitant about close contact, we can use a long-handled spoon to give them treats, or even just hold our hand out, palm up, and let them come to us if they choose to.
Yeah, it's all about those baby steps and letting them kind of dictate the pace.
Exactly.
Okay, well, what about resource guarding? This is something I've heard a lot about, especially with rescue dogs who might have had to, compete for food or toys in their past.
Yeah, resource guarding can definitely be a challenge, but the good news is it often responds really well to systematic desensitization, which is basically, teaching the dog that letting go of something they value actually leads to something even better.
So instead of scolding them for guarding, we're actually rewarding them for sharing. That almost seems counterintuitive.
It does, but it makes sense when you think about it. One effective technique that you'll see in the material you provided is what's called trade-up games, where you offer a higher value treat in exchange for the object they're guarding.
Oh, okay.
Over time, they start to see that letting go of something doesn't mean losing out, it means getting something even more rewarding.
It's not even just about treats, is it? I mean, we could use toys or praise or anything that really motivates that specific dog, right?
Absolutely. And this is where teaching commands like drop it and leave it can be so valuable. It gives the dog a clear cue to relinquish that item, and they know a positive consequence is coming. In fact, one study found that dogs trained using these positive reinforcement methods showed significantly less resource guarding behavior than those trained with traditional, like, punishment-based methods.
It's amazing how powerful that positive reinforcement can be. But what if the resource guarding is really severe or even, gets dangerous? Is there a point where we need to seek professional help?
Yeah, you're right to bring that up. If the behavior poses a risk to, either the dog's safety or the safety of others, it's absolutely essential to consult with a certified dog behaviorist or even a veterinary behaviorist. They can really assess the situation and create a tailored plan that addresses the underlying causes.
Right? That's a good reminder that we don't have to go it alone. There are experts out there who can help us navigate these tricky situations. Okay, let's move on to another challenge that can be so common in rescue dogs. Separation anxiety. I think a lot of dog owners dread dealing with this. It's heartbreaking to see your dog panic when you leave.
Absolutely. And for rescue dogs, separation anxiety can be especially tough. Think about it. They've often experienced abandonment or really unpredictable separations in the past.
Right?
So when they're left alone, those fears can resurface, even if they're now in a loving and stable home.
So it makes you realize just how much their past experiences can impact their behavior in the present. So how do we actually help them overcome this fear of being alone? Is it just a matter of leaving them for longer and longer periods until they kind of get used to it?
That's one of those big myths about separation anxiety. Forcing them to just tough it out can actually make the anxiety worse.
Right.
Instead, the focus should be on gradually building their independence and creating those positive associations with being alone. We start with very short absences, like you step out of sight for just a few seconds, then return before they even have a chance to get anxious.
So we're kind of proving to them that we always come back, that they're not being abandoned.
Exactly. And as they get more comfortable with those little brief absences, we can slowly increase the duration, but always making sure to return before they reach that anxiety threshold. The key is to set them up for success, not failure.
So we're slowly chipping away at the fear instead of throwing them in the deep end.
Exactly.
I like that. And the material you shared also talked about desensitizing them to departure cues. Can you explain what that means and how we can do it effectively?
Yeah, you're talking about those seemingly insignificant things we do before we leave the house.
Right.
Like picking up your keys, putting on your shoes. For a dog with separation anxiety, these actions can be huge triggers, because they've learned to associate them with being left alone.
It's like their internal alarm bells start going off.
Exactly. So to desensitize them, we start incorporating those cues into our daily routine, even when we're not leaving. Maybe you pick up your keys and then just walk into another room, or you put on your shoes and then sit down to read a book. The goal is to break that association between those cues and actually leaving.
So we're teaching them that those cues don't always mean they're being left alone. Like we're
Exactly.
taking the power away from those trigger points.
That's a great way to put it. And of course, our own behavior plays a huge role in managing separation anxiety.
Right.
We want to keep arrivals and departures really calm and low-key, no matter how tempting it is to, shower them with affection when we leave or come back.
So no big emotional goodbyes or, frantic greetings when we return.
Right. Just act like it's no big deal, project a sense of calm confidence, which can, in turn, help the dog feel more secure.
Right. But realistically, what if, despite our best efforts, the dog still shows signs of distress when we leave them alone? Are there other strategies we can try?
You bring up a really good point. Not all dogs are going to respond to these techniques in the same way. Some dogs, especially those with a severe history of trauma or neglect, they might just need a bit more support.
Okay.
In these cases, you might need to consider safe confinement, like using a crate or a designated dog-proof room until they build up more confidence. But this should always be done, under the guidance of a professional to make sure the dog's okay and to prevent any negative associations with confinement.
Right. It's a good point about getting that professional help. Sometimes the best thing we can do for our dogs is recognize when we've reached our limits and reach out to those who have, the experience and knowledge to help us navigate those really tough situations.
Exactly. It's about advocating for our dogs and giving them the best possible chance for a happy and healthy life.
Absolutely. And on that note, we've covered a lot today, from fear of handling and resource guarding to, the details of separation anxiety. But as we've emphasized, throughout this whole deep dive, rehabilitation is a journey, not a destination.
And it's an ongoing process, of learning, adapting, and strengthening that bond with your rescue dog.
It really is. And in part 3, we're going to delve into those long-term strategies for continued success,
Okay.
ensuring that your dog not only survives, but truly thrives in their new life. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've talked about, their past, making them feel safe, using brain training to build that trust, and even tackled some of those behavioral things that can come up. But now I want to zoom out a bit and talk about the long game. How do we make sure this process we've made sticks and create a truly fulfilling life for these dogs?
Well, I think you've hit on something really crucial here. It's about understanding that rehabilitation isn't like a one-time thing. It takes continued effort, and it's a process even after those initial hurdles.
So we don't just reach some magical finish line and then just coast. We need to keep at it with the positive reinforcement, the brain training.
You got it. One of the biggest takeaways from all this material you've gathered is that ongoing training is key for success in the long run. And it's not about drilling commands over and over. It's about keeping it interesting for both of you.
So no more endless sit and stay drills in the backyard. What kind of training keeps it stimulating for, everyone involved?
Think of it as lifelong learning for your dog. Regular training sessions, even short ones like 5 or 10 minutes a day, can make a world of difference.
Okay.
It reinforces the positive behaviors we've worked so hard to build, right? And it keeps that bond strong.
Right.
Don't be afraid to change things up a bit. Introduce new challenges, try new activities, Keep those brains working.
So keep them mentally and physically stimulated. I got it. And I bet this is where those advanced trick training things come in, like the things you see on those dog shows, right?
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be about performing for an audience or anything. Trick training is just a great way to challenge their minds, build their confidence, and honestly just have fun together.
right?
It deepens that connection through play and positive reinforcement.
So we're strengthening the bond and keeping their minds from getting bored. I'm really starting to see the bigger picture now. But let's be realistic. This isn't always easy. There will be good days and bad days, moments of frustration, maybe even feeling like you're going backwards. What advice do you have for getting through those tougher parts?
That's where having a good support system can be so important.
Okay.
Rehabilitating a rescue dog, it can be a long journey, and it's way easier with a team of, cheerleaders in your corner.
So we're talking about more than just family and friends, right?
Exactly. Connecting with other rescue dog owners, finding a trainer you trust, even joining online groups that focus on positive training, all that can provide so much support, advice, encouragement.
It's like having a whole group of people who get it. The challenges, the joys of rescue dogs, they can share what worked for them too.
Right, and don't forget the professionals. If you're dealing with something that's beyond your experience, don't hesitate to reach out to a behaviorist. They can give you that expert advice and make a plan specifically for you and your dog.
So it's okay to ask for help. That's actually probably the best thing you can do for you and your dog. You mentioned tracking progress earlier. Why is that important in the long run?
Well, it helps you stay organized and motivated, first of all.
Okay.
You can see how far you've come, celebrate the wins, and it helps you notice patterns or things that might be roadblocks. It's like having a training journal where you write down milestones, any changes in behavior you see, and which methods are working best for your dog.
That would be super helpful, right? Like if you see your dog gets anxious every time you grab your keys, you can focus on desensitizing them to that.
Exactly. And by keeping track of those triggers, you can manage their environment better, help them avoid unnecessary stress, setting them up for success.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. The challenges, the patience, the power of brain training to really change trauma into trust. But what really stands out to me is that this isn't about a destination. It's a journey.
I love how you put that. It's embracing the whole process, big or small, and cherishing that connection that grows stronger over time. And honestly, realizing how much our rescue dogs can teach us about resilience, forgiveness, unconditional love.
It's a journey that changes everyone. And I think we'll leave our listeners with one last thought. We talked a lot about brain training for dogs, but what if we use those same principles, patience, positive reinforcement, understanding, in our own relationships with people?
That's a powerful question because, in a way, aren't we all works in progress? Always learning, growing, trying to connect better with each other. Maybe there's something we can all take away from this, for ourselves and the people we care about.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep those brains engaged, and don't forget how powerful a little patience, love, and understanding can be.